Commander Ju Park stared at the holographic message from the Terran Empire. It hovered above the United Earth Defense Council table, its alien script translated into stark white text. The message was simple: surrender Earth's resources and accept status as a tributary planet, or face annihilation. They'd given us 72 hours to respond, Ju said, her voice steady despite the weight of 6 billion lives on her shoulders. Intelligence suggests they've conquered 17 civilizations using this exact playbook. Admiral Doyen, Kim's weathered face hardened. The Terrans underestimate us. They see our relative youth as a spacefaring species and assume weakness. They don't understand what they're dealing with. History has shown repeatedly what happens when humanity's back is against the wall, Dr. Minho Lee added, the xenoanthropologist's eyes never leaving the ultimatum. We don't capitulate. We innovate. As the council debated their limited options, a classified file appeared on Juwoo's tablet. Project Helios, a theoretical weapon system so destructive it had been buried in the deepest archives. She hesitated only a moment before opening it. The room fell silent as Juwoo read through the file. Her face gave nothing away, but her knuckles turned white as she gripped the tablet. The other council members watched her, waiting. There might be a way, she finally said. But the cost. She couldn't finish the sentence. Juwoo passed the tablet to Admiral Kim. His eyes widened as he scrolled through the details of Project Helios. Is this even possible? He asked, looking at Dr. Sung-Ho Yoon, the council's chief scientist. Dr. Yoon nodded slowly. Theoretically, yes. We've had the technology for decades, but it was deemed too dangerous to develop further. The council spent the next hour reviewing the file. Project Helios wasn't one weapon, but thousands of microscopic robots, nanites programmed to target the specific genetic makeup of the Terran species. Once released, they would spread throughout the enemy empire, attacking only Terrans, while leaving other life forms untouched. This isn't a weapon, General Yoonji Choi said quietly. It's genocide. And what would you call what they plan to do to us? Admiral Kim countered. They've given us two choices, slavery or extinction. I'm just suggesting we give them the same options. The debate raged on as midnight approached. Outside the conference room windows, the lights of Seoul sparkled against the night sky. 6 billion people slept, unaware that their fate was being decided in this room. Juwoo stood and walked to the window. 7 years ago, humans had made their first contact with alien life. 5 years ago, they'd joined the galactic community as a minor power. Now, they faced extinction at the hands of an empire that saw them as nothing more than resources to be harvested. How long would it take to deploy? She asked without turning around. 3 days for full production, Dr. Yoon replied. We'd need to convert several manufacturing facilities. Another week for the nanites to reach all Terran worlds. And the success rate. Based on the biological samples we have of the Terrans, the nanites would be 99.7% effective. Their entire population would be gone within a month. The room fell silent again. Juwoo turned to face her colleagues. I want alternatives, she said firmly. Diplomatic options, conventional military responses, evacuation plans, everything. We have 72 hours before we need to respond to their ultimatum. I want viable options on my desk in 48. The meeting broke up shortly after. Juwoo stayed behind, staring at the holographic ultimatum still floating above the table. She thought of Earth's history. How often had one civilization threatened another with annihilation? How many times had those threats been carried out? Her tablet blinked with an incoming message. It was from Dr. Yoon. Production facilities identified. Awaiting your order. Juwoo didn't reply. Instead, she called up images from the 17 worlds already conquered by the Terrans. Worlds once full of life and civilization, now stripped of resources, their people enslaved or worse. Would Earth be next? The next day brought no new options. The Earth defense fleet was strong, but no match for the massive Terran armada now positioning itself at the edge of the solar system. Diplomatic channels remained open, but the Terran Emperor refused to modify his demands. Zhu met with President Junho Kang in his underground bunker. The political leader looked tired, his usual confidence replaced by grim resignation. "They say you have a weapon that could save us," he said without preamble. "Not a weapon, Mr. President. A virus, a manufactured plague designed to target only Terrans." The president closed his eyes. "And it would kill them all." "Yes, every last one, including the children, the civilians who have no say in their empire's actions." Zhu nodded. "The nanites don't distinguish between soldiers and civilians. They target the Terran genetic code. All of them would die." President Kang stood and paced the small room. "My grandfather told me stories about the old wars on Earth, how nations once built weapons that could destroy entire cities, how they lived for decades under the threat of mutual destruction." He paused. "He said the miracle wasn't that those weapons were never used again after Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The miracle was that they were only used twice." "This is different," Zhu said. "We're facing extinction." "Is it different? Really?" The president turned to her. "If we use this weapon, we save Earth but lose our humanity. We become the very monsters we fear. With respect, sir, we'll be dead monsters. The Terrans have never bluffed. They will destroy our world if we don't submit." The countdown continued. 50 hours. 40. 30. The Terran ships moved closer. In a secure facility beneath the Antarctic ice, Dr. Jung and his team prepared the nanite production line. They needed only the final authorization code to begin. 24 hours remained when Zhu called the council together again. No new options had emerged. The Terran Emperor had sent a new message. Their patience was wearing thin. "We've run out of time," Admiral Kim said. "We need to make a decision." Zhu looked around the table at the faces of Earth's leadership. Some resigned, some angry, all afraid. "We're better than this," Dr. Li said softly. "There must be another way." "There isn't," General Choi replied. "It's them or us." Zhu picked up her tablet. The authorization code for Project Helios waited, needing only her thumbprint to activate. She thought of all the people who would die if she didn't act, and all who would die if she did. The fate of 2 species rested in her hands. The clock continued to count down. The Helios protocol had been developed in secret for decades, a failsafe against existential threats. Not a single superweapon, but thousands of self-replicating nanites capable of targeting specific genetic markers while leaving infrastructure intact. In a hidden facility beneath the Antarctic ice, Zhu watched as scientists made final adjustments to the delivery system. Ethical debates had raged behind closed doors, but time was running out. "Once deployed, there's no recalling them," Dr. Haijin Kang warned, her hands trembling slightly. "Every Terran in their empire will be affected within weeks. Their biology makes them particularly vulnerable. And there's no possibility of affecting humans or other species." Zhu asked. "None. We've run every simulation. The nanites target only their specific genome before self-destructing." Zhu thought of the 17 subjugated species suffering under Terran rule, of Earth's children who might never see adulthood if she hesitated. "Begin deployment," she ordered. "And may history forgive us." The Antarctic facility hummed with activity. Behind thick glass walls, robotic arms assembled microscopic machines by the millions. Each nanite was smaller than a human cell, invisible to the naked eye, but programmed with a singular purpose: seek and destroy Terran life. Dr. Kang typed the final command sequence. The production lines accelerated to maximum capacity. Within hours, the first batch would be ready for deployment. "The delivery vessels are prepared," Dr. Kang said. 5,000 stealth drones, each carrying millions of nanites. They'll bypass the Terran fleet and enter hyperspace jumps directly to all known Terran worlds. Zhu nodded. She had not slept in 36 hours. The weight of her decision pressed down on her like the miles of ice above their hidden base. "Show me the simulations again," she requested. Dr. Kang brought up a holographic display. It showed the projected spread of the nanites through the Terran Empire. Tiny blue dots representing the nanites moved from planet to planet, multiplying as they went. Red dots representing Terran life forms blinked out one by one until none remained. Each nanite can replicate itself using materials found in common environments, Dr. Kang explained. They'll spread through water systems, air currents, even physical contact. The Terrans won't know what's happening until it's too late. And after? Ju asked. What happens to the nanites when there are no more Terrans? They'll break down into harmless organic compounds within 30 days of their last contact with Terran DNA. Nothing will remain. No evidence. No trace. The perfect weapon. The perfect crime. Ju felt sick. A young scientist approached with a tablet. "Commander Park, the first batch is ready for inspection." Ju followed him to a sealed chamber. Inside, a small vial contained what looked like clear water. There was nothing to see, no way to tell that this innocent-looking liquid contained billions of programmed killers. "Will they suffer?" she asked quietly. Dr. Kang hesitated. "The process will be relatively quick. Respiratory failure within hours of infection. They'll lose consciousness before the end." Ju closed her eyes. Small mercy. An alert sounded throughout the facility. Admiral Kim's face appeared on the main screen, his expression grim. "Commander, the Terran fleet has moved into attack position. They fired on our outer defenses. It seems they're not waiting for their own deadline. How long do we have?" "Hours, maybe less. Their main force is bypassing our fleet. They're heading straight for Earth." Ju turned to Dr. Kang. "We need to launch now. The first wave is ready, but we're still producing. Now, Doctor. Every minute we wait means more human lives lost." Dr. Kang nodded and began the launch sequence. Deep beneath the ice, hidden bay doors opened. The first 100 drones rose silently into the Antarctic night, accelerating upward until they vanished among the stars. "They'll reach Terran Prime in 6 days," Dr. Kang said. "The other core worlds within 8. 6 days. Ju wondered if Earth would still exist by then. She wondered if she could live with herself either way. "Commander," a communications officer called out, "we're receiving a direct transmission from the Terran flagship. They're requesting you specifically." The main screen changed to show the face of Supreme Warlord Taiju. His scaled skin was the deep blue of Terran nobility, his eyes the cold yellow of a predator. "Commander Park," he said, his translator converting his clicks and hisses into smooth human speech. "I am told you are the one who decides Earth's fate." Ju straightened her uniform. "I am one of many leaders, Warlord. Why have you begun your attack before your own deadline?" The alien made a gesture that might have been a shrug. "Time is valuable. I saw no reason to wait when your answer was obvious." "And what answer did you expect?" "Defiance, of course. Your species has a reputation for stubbornness. It makes little difference. By tomorrow, your world will be ours." Ju thought of the drones now racing through space, carrying death to this creature's homeworld. "You seem very confident, Warlord." "I have conquered 17 worlds, Commander. Some fought. Some surrendered. All fell. You will be no different." "Perhaps," Ju said. "But tell me, in your studies of human history, did you read about a place called Thermopylae, or perhaps the Alamo?" The Terran's translator seemed to struggle with the references. "Battles. You speak of battles where your kind were defeated. We were, but they were defeats that inspired others to fight harder, to never surrender." Ju leaned forward. "Even in defeat, humans can be dangerous, Warlord. Remember that." The Terran made a sound that might have been laughter. "Brave words from a doomed world. I will remember them when I walk through the ruins of your cities." The transmission ended. Ju turned back to Dr. Kang, who had been monitoring the launch progress. "Second wave is away," she reported. "Third preparing now." Across the room, scientists worked frantically, some with tears streaming down their faces. They all knew what they were doing. They all understood the moral line they were crossing. But they also knew the alternative. "Dr. Kang," Ju said quietly, "if this works, when this works, what will the universe think of us?" The scientist was silent for a long moment. "They will fear us," she finally replied. "They will call us monsters, but they will leave us alone." Outside, the Antarctic night was filled with the silent departure of hundreds more drones, each carrying invisible death to an unsuspecting empire. Within the facility, production continued. There was no going back now. Humanity had made its choice. 6 days until the first nanites reached Terran Prime. The question was, could Earth hold out that long? Ju looked at the tactical display showing the Terran fleet advancing on Earth. "They have no idea what's coming," she whispered. "No," Dr. Kang agreed. "That's what makes it so terrible. And so perfect." The fate of 2 civilizations was now racing through the cold vacuum of space. Only one would survive. The Terran fleet commander, Supreme Warlord Taiju, laughed when Earth's response arrived. Not submission, but defiance. His massive dreadnoughts moved into position around Earth's moon, weapons charging. "These humans are even more primitive than our reports suggested," he told his officers. "They believe they can resist with their pitiful technology." The first plasma volleys from Terran ships destroyed Earth's outer defensive satellites. Taiju expected immediate surrender. Instead, thousands of tiny unmanned vessels launched from Earth, so small they barely registered on scanners. Some kind of primitive drone attack, his tactical officer suggested dismissively. Taiju watched with amusement as the objects dispersed, not toward his fleet, but outward, toward the jump points leading to Terran space. "Let them flee. We'll hunt them down after this world burns." What the warlord couldn't know was that humanity had struck first, not at his ships, but at the heart of his empire. On the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Glory, Taiju settled into his command chair. The seat adjusted to his large frame, supporting his heavy tail. Around him, Terran officers worked at their stations. All wore the blue-black scales of pure bloodlines. All had served in multiple conquest campaigns. "Prepare the main cannons," Taiju ordered. "Target their largest population centers. Let's show them what real power looks like." His weapons officer, Sub-Commander Doju, input the commands. "Cannons charging, Supreme Warlord. Ready in 3 minutes." Taiju flicked his tongue in satisfaction. Another easy victory for the Empire. Another primitive species to add to their collection of slaves. The Emperor would be pleased. "Supreme Warlord," called his sensor officer. "Those small vessels from Earth, they're accelerating to jump speed." "Refugees," Taiju said dismissively. "Let the cowards run." "Sir, their trajectory suggests they're heading directly for Terran Prime and our core worlds." For the first time, Taiju felt a flicker of unease. Why would they send empty vessels to our worlds? "Scan them again." The sensor officer adjusted his instruments. "I detect no life forms aboard. No significant power signatures. They appear to be simple transport drones carrying water." Taiju relaxed again. A desperate gesture. "Perhaps they think we need their primitive offerings." He laughed, and his officers joined in. "Continue with the attack." On Earth, Commander Ju Park watched the tactical display as the first wave of nanite carriers successfully jumped to hyperspace. The second and third waves were already moving into position. "The Terrans have taken the bait," Admiral Kim reported. "They think we're running scared. Or sending gifts," Ju added. "Either way, they won't stop them." "Our defense fleet is in position," the Admiral continued. "They won't hold long against the Terran forces, but they'll buy us time." Time was all they needed now. The nanites were on their way. In 6 days, they would begin their silent work. Back on the Eternal Glory, Taju's victory celebration was interrupted by an urgent message from Terran Prime. The Emperor himself appeared on the main screen, his scales the deep purple of the royal bloodline. "Supreme Warlord," the Emperor said, "why have you allowed human vessels to approach our homeworld?" Taju bowed his head. "My Emperor, they are empty drones. The pathetic attempt by the humans to... I'm not sure what. Perhaps they seek to negotiate by sending gifts." "I don't care what you think they are," the Emperor hissed. "Nothing from Earth should reach our worlds. Intercept and destroy them immediately." "Yes, my Emperor." Taju ended the transmission and turned to his officers. "Prepare a pursuit force. Those human drones must be destroyed before they reach our space." But it was too late. The first wave of nanite carriers had already made their jumps. By the time Terran ships could follow, the drones would have reached their destinations. On Earth, the situation was growing desperate. The Terran fleet had destroyed the outer defenses and was moving in for the kill. Cities around the world prepared for orbital bombardment. Millions huddled in shelters, waiting for the end. In the Antarctic base, Zhu received reports of the battle. Earth's ships fought bravely, but were heavily outmatched. The fourth wave of nanite carriers was ready to launch, but Terran forces now blocked the jump points. "We need to create a diversion," Zhu told Admiral Kim over the secure channel. "Something to draw their attention while we launch the final carriers." The Admiral's face was grim. "I'll lead our remaining fleet in a direct assault on their flagship. That should keep them busy." "That's suicide," Zhu protested. "It's necessary," the Admiral replied. "Just make sure those nanites reach their targets. Our sacrifice must not be in vain." Before Zhu could argue further, the Admiral ended the transmission. Minutes later, Earth's remaining warships charged directly at the Terran fleet. Taju was surprised by the humans' sudden aggression. "They dare to attack us directly. Their bravery exceeds their intelligence." The space around Earth's orbit filled with weapons fire. Human ships, smaller and less advanced, darted between the massive Terran vessels, firing at close range. They inflicted minimal damage, but created maximum chaos. In the confusion, the fourth wave of nanite carriers slipped past the blockade and jumped to hyperspace. Admiral Kim's flagship engaged the Eternal Glory directly. The human vessel was less than a quarter the size of Taju's dreadnought, but it fought with remarkable determination. "These humans are more troublesome than expected," Taju admitted as his ship shuddered from a direct hit. "But still no match for us." The Eternal Glory's main cannon fired, cutting Admiral Kim's ship in half. Other human vessels met similar fates. Within an hour, Earth's defense fleet was reduced to floating debris. Taju prepared to resume the attack on Earth itself when another urgent message arrived from Terran Prime. "Supreme Warlord," said a panicked official, "the human drones have dispersed their contents into our atmosphere. Our scientists detect nothing harmful, but the Emperor demands your immediate return. The conquest of Earth must wait." Taju was furious. His moment of glory, interrupted by empty human vessels carrying water. It made no sense, but one did not disobey the Emperor. "Prepare for jump to Terran Prime," he ordered reluctantly. "The humans will still be here when we return." On Earth, Zhu received the news with mixed emotions. Admiral Kim and thousands of brave fighters were dead, but their sacrifice had worked. The Terran fleet was withdrawing, recalled to their homeworld. "They still don't understand what's happening," Dr. Kang said softly. "By the time they realize, it will be too late." Zhu nodded. In the coming days, the nanites would spread throughout the Terran population. The microscopic machines would replicate, target Terran cells, and begin their deadly work. An entire species would start to die, one Terran at a time. "We've won," someone said. Zhu looked at the tactical display showing the retreating Terran ships. "No," she replied. "We've survived. There's a difference." As the Eternal Glory jumped to hyperspace, Taju had no way of knowing that he was carrying death back to his own people. No way of knowing that the water from those small, insignificant human drones was already in Terran Prime's atmosphere, already being breathed in by millions of his kind. The first strike had been launched, not with plasma cannons or nuclear weapons, but with machines too small to see and too deadly to stop. The countdown to extinction had begun. 3 weeks later, as Earth continued to resist the Terran blockade, reports began filtering in from the Empire's core worlds. Isolated cases at first, Terrans collapsing in government buildings, on military vessels, in homes. The symptoms progressed rapidly: fever, respiratory distress, cellular breakdown. Imperial scientists scrambled for answers but found none. The nanites, programmed to target Terran cells and then disintegrate without a trace, left no evidence of their existence. On the flagship orbiting Earth, Warlord Teju received increasingly desperate communications. Half the Imperial Council had perished. Military academies reported 90% fatality rates. Breeding centers were completely devastated. "What weapon is this?" he demanded of his remaining officers, many already showing symptoms themselves. "How can primitives possess such power?" The humans had sent no further communications. They simply continued their defensive operations, waiting as the Terran Empire began to implode from within. Teju stared at the latest reports with disbelief. His claw-like fingers trembled as he scrolled through death counts from across the Empire. What had started as a few isolated cases had exploded into millions. On Terran Prime alone, the death toll had reached 8 million and was climbing by the hour. "It makes no sense," said his science officer, Hanju. The once proud Terran's scales had dulled to a sickly gray. He coughed violently, a spray of blue blood spattering the display screen. "We've detected no biological agents, no radiation, no toxins. Our people just die." Teju had recalled most of his fleet from Earth to defend the core worlds, leaving only a token blockade force. Now those ships reported the same mysterious deaths among their crews. Some vessels had gone completely silent, drifting in space with all hands dead. "It must be connected to those drones," Teju insisted. "The ones carrying water." "But how?" "Our scientists found nothing harmful in the samples." "Perhaps," Hanju suggested. His breathing labored. "They contain something too small for our sensors to detect. Something that targets only our biology." The thought chilled Teju to his core. A weapon that killed only Terrans. It seemed impossible. Such technology was beyond even the most advanced civilizations they had conquered. A junior officer approached, his young scales already showing signs of the illness. "Supreme Warlord, we've received a message from the Imperial Palace. The Emperor is dead." Silence fell across the bridge. The Emperor dead, the immortal ruler who had led them to conquer 17 worlds. "Who takes command of the Empire?" Teju asked. "The entire Imperial family has perished, sir. The chain of succession is broken." Chaos was spreading through the Empire faster than the mysterious illness. Without the Emperor, the strict hierarchy that kept order was collapsing. Reports came in of military units fighting each other, of planetary governors declaring independence, of slave revolts on worlds where Terran masters had suddenly died. "We must return to Terran Prime," Teju decided. "I will take control and restore order." "Sir," the navigation officer interrupted, "a significant portion of our crew is too ill to function. Jump calculations are becoming difficult too." He stopped mid-sentence, clutched his chest, and collapsed to the floor. Teju felt a tickle in his throat. He suppressed a cough, refusing to show weakness. But he knew. The illness had reached him too. On Earth, Commander Ju Park received regular updates on the Terran situation. Surveillance drones, small enough to evade detection, transmitted images from across the Empire. The pictures were both vindicating and horrifying. "Hospital systems on all major Terran worlds have collapsed," reported intelligence officer Subin Lee. "Military bases are reporting 70 to 95% fatality rates. Their fleet is in disarray." Ju watched the screens with a stony expression. This was what victory looked like. Not glorious battles, but hospital corridors filled with the dying. Playgrounds empty of children. Cities falling silent one by one. Their blockade of Earth is weakening, Admiral Yunho Choi noted. He had replaced Admiral Kim after the latter's sacrifice. Several of their ships have drifted out of formation. No response to communications. Leave them be, Ju ordered. No attacks. No communications. We wait. Dr. Kang entered the command center, her face drawn with exhaustion. The creator of the weapon that was winning the war had not slept properly in weeks. The nanites are performing exactly as designed, she reported. Based on our models, Terran civilization will effectively cease to exist within another 2 weeks. And then, Ju asked, then the nanites will run out of targets and self-destruct, breaking down into harmless compounds. As promised. Ju nodded. And the other species in their empire? The slaves. Completely unaffected. We've detected no cross-species contamination. It was the cleanest genocide in history. No nuclear wastelands. No destroyed planets. Just one species, removed like a surgeon cutting out a cancer. Back on the Eternal Glory, Taju's condition had worsened. His once powerful body now felt like it was burning from the inside out. Half his bridge crew was dead. The others were dying. The mighty flagship drifted in space, its engines silent. Taju dragged himself to the communication station. With trembling claws, he opened a channel to Earth. On the command center screens, Ju was surprised to see Taiju's face appear. The once proud warlord was almost unrecognizable. His scales had fallen away in patches, revealing raw flesh beneath. His yellow eyes were clouded. "Commander Park," he rasped, each word clearly painful. "What have you done to us?" Ju considered ignoring the transmission. What was there to say to a dying enemy? But something compelled her to answer. "We defended ourselves, warlord, as any species would." "This is not defense," Taiju hissed. "This is extermination. You are killing us all, our children, our future." "As you would have killed ours," Ju replied, her voice steady. "You gave us no choice." "There is always choice." Taiju coughed violently, blue blood trickling from his mouth. "We would have spared many of you, used you, but not exterminated you completely. Small comfort to those who would have lived as slaves." Taiju's laugh turned into another cough. "You think yourselves morally superior. Look at what you've done. The galaxy will never forget this. Never forgive." Ju felt the eyes of her staff on her. They had all wrestled with the moral implications of their choice. None had found peace with it. "Perhaps you're right," she admitted. "Perhaps we've become the monsters we feared. But we will live with that burden. Our children will live. Not if the other species unite against you," Taiju warned. "When they learn what you can do, what you have done." The transmission cut off suddenly. On another screen, Ju saw the Eternal Glory's lights flicker and die. The flagship of the Terran Empire was now a tomb drifting in space. Days passed. More reports came in. The Terran death toll had reached billions. Their once mighty empire was collapsing into disorder. On conquered worlds, the enslaved species were taking back their freedom, puzzled but grateful for their sudden deliverance. And through it all, Earth remained silent. No victory announcements. No demands for surrender from the few Terrans still alive. Just patient waiting for the biological clock to run its course. In her private quarters, Ju watched the stars through her window. Somewhere out there, an entire species was dying because of her order. History would judge them. As Taiju had said, perhaps harshly, perhaps they deserved it. But Earth would survive. Humanity would continue. In the cruel calculus of species survival, that was all that mattered. Wasn't it? 6 months later, Ju Park stood before the Galactic Council, 17 newly liberated species in attendance. The Terran threat had been neutralized, not through planetary bombardment or conventional warfare, but through a precisely targeted attack that left their worlds intact. Humanity did what was necessary to survive, Ju stated to the assembled delegates. When threatened with extinction, we responded in kind. The Terran ultimatum forced our hand, but we chose a path that spared innocent civilizations and preserved habitable worlds. The council chamber remained silent. Some representatives regarded humans with newfound respect, others with barely concealed fear. We seek no empire, Ju continued. The former Terran worlds are free to determine their own futures, but let our actions serve as a reminder. Humanity will not be conquered. We will not surrender our autonomy, and those who threaten our existence will find their own in jeopardy. As she concluded, Ju thought of the burden humanity would carry forward, the moral weight of their decision. They had survived, but at a terrible cost. The ashes of the Terran civilization would forever be a reminder of what humans were capable of when pushed too far. History would judge whether they had been saviors or monsters. Perhaps Hugh realized they were both. The Grand Hall of the Galactic Council was unlike anything humans had seen before. Crystal walls reached hundreds of meters high, catching the light of 3 suns and breaking it into countless rainbows. Delegates from over 50 species sat in rising tiers, each in environments suited to their biology. Some breathed methane. Others needed high pressure or extreme temperatures. Technology made it possible for all to exist in the same space, to communicate despite vast biological differences. Ju stood on the speaker's platform, feeling very small. 6 months ago, she had been an unknown commander from a backwater planet. Now she represented a species that had wiped out another in self-defense. The weight of 8 billion human lives, and the 11 billion Terran lives they had taken, pressed down on her shoulders. The human delegate has finished her statement, announced the council mediator, a tall, willowy being with skin like polished copper. The council will now ask questions. A representative of the Voth, one of the species formerly enslaved by the Terrans, rose from his seat. His reptilian features were hard to read, but his voice carried no accusation. For 80 years, my people suffered under Terran rule. We watched our children taken as slaves, our resources stripped away, our culture erased. Now we are free, thanks to your actions. He paused. But I must ask, if another species threatens Earth in the future, will your response be the same? Total extinction. Ju had expected this question. She had rehearsed many answers. None seemed right. I hope we never face such a choice again, she said finally. But I cannot promise what actions we might take to survive. Can any species here make such a promise? Murmurs spread through the chamber. Many delegates shifted uncomfortably. Another delegate stood, this one from an ancient race called the Mithran. Their crystalline bodies contained swirling gases of deep purple and blue. The weapon you created. These nanites that targeted only Terran biology. This technology is concerning. What assurances do we have that you haven't developed similar weapons against other species, against those sitting in this very chamber? The question sent a chill through the room. Ju saw fear in many alien eyes. This was the real issue, not what humans had done, but what they might do next. Project Helios was developed specifically against the Terran threat. Ju answered carefully. All research has been contained, all production facilities shut down, but the knowledge remains. The Mithran pressed. The scientists who created this weapon could create others. Yes, Ju admitted, the knowledge exists. Just as the knowledge to build planet killers exists among many races here. The question is not whether we can destroy each other, we all can, but whether we choose peace instead. The council mediator intervened. The human delegate raises a fair point. Many species represented here possess weapons of mass destruction. The Voth themselves once unleashed a bioweapon that sterilized an entire sentient species, though that was millennia ago. Ju hadn't known this. She looked at the Voth delegate with new understanding. Perhaps that was why he had not condemned humanity outright. A small furry delegate stood next. The Lintari were known for their direct approach. "Let's speak plainly," he squeaked. "You humans scare us. You're newcomers who just committed genocide. Yet you come here not in shame but seemingly proud of your efficiency. Why should we trust you?" Juwu took a deep breath. "We don't ask for trust. We haven't earned it. We ask only for understanding. When faced with extinction, we chose survival. Many of you might have done the same. But there's more," she continued. "The 17 worlds the Terrans conquered, we've left them free. We could have claimed them, built our own empire. We didn't. That should count for something." The Lintari sat down without reply, but Juwu could see thoughtful expressions throughout the chamber. The questions continued for hours. Some delegates were hostile, others curious, a few even sympathetic. Through it all, Juwu maintained her composure, neither apologizing for humanity's survival, nor glorifying the means they had used. Finally, the council mediator called for a vote. "The question before us is this: will humanity be granted full membership in the Galactic Council, with all rights and responsibilities therein?" Juwu held her breath as the delegates cast their votes. The tally appeared on floating screens throughout the chamber. 27 in favor, 14 against, 12 abstentions. "The motion passes," the mediator announced. "Earth is now a full member of the Galactic Council." Later, at the reception following the session, Juwu stood alone by a window overlooking the Council world's vast capital city. The planet had never known war, had been a neutral meeting ground for thousands of years. The Voth delegate approached, carrying 2 glasses of a shimmering blue liquid. "A traditional drink from my world," he explained, offering one to Juwu. "It seems appropriate." "Thank you," she said, accepting the glass. "For the drink and for your vote." The Voth made a gesture she couldn't interpret. "Many will say we voted from fear. Perhaps some did. But others, like myself, voted from understanding." Understanding of what? Of what it means to face extinction. Of the choices that leaves you with. The reptilian being's eyes seemed to look inward, to some painful memory. "My ancestors once faced such a choice. They chose as you did." Juwu sipped the drink. It tasted of something like honey and cinnamon. "Does it get easier?" she asked quietly, "living with such a choice?" "No," the Voth said simply. "But you learn to carry it, and perhaps you use it to build something better." Across the room, other delegates were already approaching human scientists, diplomats, and military personnel, some with caution, others with genuine interest. The first steps toward whatever relationship humanity would have with the wider galaxy. Back on Earth, memorials had been built, not celebrating victory, but commemorating a terrible choice. Schools taught the Terran War as both a triumph of human ingenuity and a tragedy of interspecies conflict. The scientists who created the nanites had refused medals, asking instead for funding to develop peaceful technologies. Juwu looked out at the alien city, with its impossible architecture and beings from 100 worlds. Humanity had survived. They had kept their freedom, but the cost would echo through their history forever. "To the future," the Voth said, raising his glass. "To better choices," Juwu replied. As night fell on the Council world, the representatives of Earth took their first steps as members of a larger community. Feared, respected, perhaps never fully trusted, but alive. Humanity had ensured its continued existence in the cosmos. Whether as saviors or monsters or both, they would go forward into the stars, carrying the lesson of the Terran War. Survival came at a price, and that price was paid not just by the body, but by the soul. The end.